Hey guys, this is Grant for Brutally Delicious, introducing a new little segment that we're going to do as part of Brutally Raw. Brutally Raw does a lot of food, a lot of recipes, a lot of meals. And I looked at it and I thought to myself, I know how to do things with recipes. No, I'm not cremating grandma. It's a cocktail shaker. Rockstars love cocktails. So that's what we're going to do moving forward with this little segment called Full Metal Alchemy. Now, it's not going to be just me that's making cocktails. We're going to have some guests come forward. Hopefully, we're going to have some big names from the rock and metal scene that are going to do little videos for this as well. Maybe if they're in my area, then I might be able to hook up with them in a bar or something like that, and we can do a little session behind there. But I am going to keep things ticking over. You're going to keep seeing me quite regularly on these episodes, and I'm looking forward to it. So on this first episode, I'm going to start with one of my, I would like to say, original creations. I invented this cocktail in about 2004 with my buddy Kay. We were working behind a bar that I used to run on Halloween, and we were trying to come up with cocktails that tasted like popular sweets, candy if you will, because I know there's a lot of Americans watching. So this one is called Anarchy. Now, there's going to be an open challenge at the end of this video, and I'm going to keep that going the entire time. But for now, I want to address something that pretty much I've just said, which is the concept of invention. Now, when I invented this cocktail, like I say, it was about 2004, okay? Fledgling days of the internet. The internet was so young in those days that there's an entire generation of guys that can't finish without the word buffering being in front of them, if you know what I mean. So with that in mind, what I want to put out there is if I build something, and I'm saying that I invented it, and you're watching this thinking, that dude said he invented it in 2004 and I invented it in 2002, make it known, okay? You know, it's important that people get credit for their creations. I'm not here to try and suggest that I've, done something that has not been done before, if it in fact has been done before. I say, early days of the internet, convergent evolution is a thing. There's every chance that somebody mixed one of my creations halfway across the world before I did, and if you did, let's say, give me a heads up, we can collaborate or something. This might end up being the kind of argument similar to the origins of Long Island iced tea. No, I think either way, especially with this recipe, we've probably invented the goth equivalent to Sex on the Beach. You see, saying that now, I wish I'd given this cocktail a little bit of a sexier name. Sex in a graveyard, sex on a gravestone, something like that. I'll tell you what, though, that has given me an idea. So within the next couple of episodes, there is going to be my first original creation for Brutally Delicious. I haven't decided what I'm going to call it yet, but I will come forward with something that I can comfortably say has not been done before for the Brutally Delicious brand. But enough of my yammering. Time for a taste. So here we've got the setup for an Anarchy. Glass full of crushed ice. Shaker full of cubed ice that we're going to use to stir. I'm going to start with a single part of Jagermeister. Anybody looking at that video is going to be thinking that is considerably more than 1 part Jagermeister. I am making this a little bit stronger, but listen to what I'm saying for your recipe. Next we've got 1 part Blue Curacao and half a part of Grenadine. Gives it a nice little sheen and takes some of the brown tones out of the Coke and the Jaeger. And then we've got Grenadine going in there. The sweetness is important on this one. Mixer for Coke, I'm going to make it with about 4 or 5 parts here. Being perfectly honest, this is the kind of drink where you can take your mixer up to about 8 parts and it'd still be comfortable. If you want it a little bit more refreshing, you want a longer drinking experience, it'll work just as well. But I make cocktails for myself like a sadist. I'm going to stir it up with the ice now. Why am I stirring and not shaking? Stirring gives you a clearer liquid. If you shake, then you tend to cloud it. Plus, I've got Coca-Cola in there. I don't want it exploding everywhere. I'm going to stir that up nicely until we've got condensation and frost forming on the outside of the shaker. And then I'll get my strainer on top of there and get it served into a glass. Anybody that's bought one of these off me before is probably used to the longer one that I mentioned before. But when we first came up with it, we were using tiny little cocktail glasses in the pub. They were only like 12 ounces. So the very original version of this was a lot more condensed. Garnish here, I'm going with half a lime. Anybody that's bought one off me will have never seen these garnished before. Limes were not easy to come by when I first invented this cocktail. Now I know what you're thinking. What kind of Neanderthal hellscape was he working in where limes were hard to come by in the early 2000s? Gateshead, then Sunderland. I don't really need to say any more than that. Then we've got some cola bottles there as garnish. And the recipe on the left-hand side of the screen. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, guys. And now for details on my open challenge. So when I ran venues and bars for a living, I had a good set of regulars, a very trustworthy set of regulars that put a lot of trust in me. Lots of customers used to come in, just hand over the money and go, Grant, make me something nice. I trust you. So I want to try and bring that forward into Brutally Delicious. So what I'm going to ask right here is, if you're watching and you've got a liquor cabinet or a fridge or a shelf in your house that's full of random alcoholic articles that you don't know what to do with them, put them in a list in the comments. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at those lists and I'll give you a shout out. You know, I'll reply saying that I've chosen you and what have you. And I'm going to make a cocktail out of those ingredients, no matter how obscure, okay? I like to challenge myself on this kind of stuff. So I'm not going to be like, oh, this person's put gin and tonic and lime in there. You know, that's too easy for me to just make up a gin and tonic. It's got to be something that I can get a hold of as well. You know, some obscure spirit that they only sell in the jungles of Borneo or something like that. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to get a hold of that stuff, although I wish I probably could, because I'd probably be tripping balls off something like that.